Tonight, we've got an hour and 15 minutes to go. We want to go back to the airlines. There's the country, I think all of us are struggling to get back to normal, and at the nation's airports, finding normal was not easy, not for the airlines themselves, not for the people who run the airports, and not for the passengers, as the new rules that have rapidly been put in effect have slowed things down. Here's CNN's Patty Davis.
Security tight as most of the nation's airports reopened, but not Reagan National Airport, where continuing concerns about flights near the Pentagon and White House kept it closed. Massive snowblowers parked to protect the control tower from a terrorist attack. At Washington Dulles Airport, passengers forced to dump razor blades, even knitting needles, anything like the knives terrorists used in Tuesday's hijackings. The terrorist attacks in New York and Washington not stopping some from returning to the skies.
I kind of, afraid of the airplane, but more than that, I just, want to go home.
I'm confident that security precautions are in place, and despite what's happened, life has to go on.
The Federal Aviation Administration ordered airlines and airports to beef up security, including a complete search of planes and terminals before they could open for business. No curbside check-in, no off-airport check-in, no more knives and carry-on luggage, boarding areas restricted to passengers.
And in times such as these, we will use all available resources to ensure the safety of our travelers.
The Transportation Secretary even talking about using the military's elite Delta Force commandos on planes to help armed federal air marshals stop hijackers. Airlines were warning passengers to arrive as much as 2 hours in advance.
The old days where you could get to the airport at the last minute and run through to the counter and the gate and get on the airplane, those days are gone.
1,200 flights had flown by mid-afternoon all across the country, from Los Angeles to Atlanta. The FAA giving the go-ahead to commercial and charter flights, but not to private planes or any overseas carriers for now. Analysts estimate airlines lost billions of dollars while grounded at a time when airlines are struggling financially.
Our highest priority is to restore the confidence of our passengers in this system. That is going to require patience on the part of our customers, but we also need to restore commerce in America.
The question now, will passengers return? Patty Davis, CNN, Washington.
Almost immediately after the attacks, Arab Americans across the country, this is disturbing and is not surprising, began feeling the backlash from it all. In North Texas, a mosque was damaged in an apparent firebombing attack. No one inside at the time. It was the third mosque attack since Tuesday. In San Francisco, blood was poured on the sidewalk of an Islamic community center, San Francisco. In Chicago, hundreds of people, many waving American flags, were held back by police as they tried to march to a mosque. And all over the United States, Arab Americans say they are tonight living in fear.
I'm blown away because I'd expect that people realize that this is not American. This is completely un-American.
Not left untouched, Arab American children who, as you can imagine, like all children, they're in a somewhat different situation, trying to understand why people are so angry at them. James.
I am afraid that they might start being mean to Muslims like they did 200 years ago to black people. I'm just going to try to show that I'm kind and I'm innocent and I'm just a good person.
Been situations like that in New York City as well. Dr. James Zogby is in Washington. He's the founder and president of the Arab American Institute, a Washington-based organization that serves as a political and policy research arm of the Arab American community. And he joins us now. Dr. Zogby, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Aaron.
It's hard, in a sense, to know what to ask. I mean, I said at the beginning, it is very disturbing. It is not surprising. We saw similar things, didn't we, after Oklahoma City?
Yeah, we did, and we expected it, and like you, we weren't surprised, but we were afraid. And there's a double tragedy in all of this for my community because we were mourning and grieving like the rest of America. I have Arab Americans in the World Trade Center building and Arab Americans in the Pentagon, and there are Arab American policemen and firefighters in New York right now working at that site. And yet, we were taken from our mourning and had to be afraid. I got horrific death threats at my office, as did others in this town, and there were actual acts of violence, as you've reported. And so it became a very difficult situation as we got pulled away from the body politic that we're a part of as American citizens and had to somehow be looking over our shoulder. But I want to tell you that there's a good story here, a good news item from today. 24 hours after the threats came, today we had an incredible outpouring of support from the President and the Attorney General and the Secretary of State to senators who called me. Senator Kennedy, and I talked to Joe Lieberman, and Senator Harkin passed a resolution, a unanimous resolution in the Senate. Senator Edwards and Senator Stabenow all called to say we want to support you, as did a dozen or so ethnic American organizations from Portuguese and Italian and Irish and Hispanic. And then just our neighbors and friends. The local police department came by and has offered us protection. And even the office next door to us, Street Law, is making lunches for people on my staff because they know they're afraid to go out. And so it's almost like we got torn away from our grief, but now America has come to embrace us to say, you can go back, you're a part of us, and you can grieve with the rest of us. And it's been a very, very heartwarming day. We know that there's going to be tough days ahead, but there's been some good in all of this as well, as difficult as it is to imagine.
Well, and that's nice to hear. As you were talking about, it struck me that we've talked before, you're a well-known person in Washington. You've moved in the circles of the Capitol for some time. People know you there. There's a difference between what official Washington says and does and sometimes what goes on in other parts of the country. How many Arab Americans are there?
There's about 3.5 million Arab Americans, and they are all over the country, and they're well established. Most of them are. They're the most vulnerable, of course, are the more recent immigrants. But I want to tell you, the Justice Department set up today a special project. We met with the Assistant Attorney General, Ralph Boyd. They've set up a special project on hate crimes. They're going to be actively pursuing those who threaten Arab Americans, because just as the terrorists can't win, and we as a people will be unified and will defeat them, we will not allow bigotry to win either, because then America won't be America anymore. And that's one thing that cannot come from this, is that we become divided as a people. And so I'm proud of the way my country's responded. I'm proud of the way my community has responded with blood drives and vigils and expressions of support for their fellow Americans everywhere. It has been a very difficult, a very painful time. It's not over. The scenes you showed tonight of people looking for closure that may never find it, that will be with us for a long time. And yet, in all of this, America finds a way to be the unique and embracing country that it is. And I think that that's important for all of us to remember.
Dr. Zogby, let me ask you one of those annoying questions. Take off your official's hat, your representative of an institution hat, and just tell me if, when you heard of what happened in New York and Washington, if you didn't close your eyes and say, oh my God, I hope that was not an Arab who did it.
You know, I didn't. I know people who did, and I've heard stories of people in my community and my own family who felt that and prayed that it wouldn't, because they knew what it would be. But I must tell you, from my perspective, I was just riveted, as everyone else was, with the horror of that scene. I've been to that building. We almost opened an office in that building because a friend of mine has an office there and was going to open a New York office for our institute there. I know that there are dozens of Arab American offices in that World Trade Center, and so I thought of the horror. Actually, what occurred to me was the people on that plane and the terror that they must have gone through as they knew that they were going to die, and only then afterwards, when the calls and the threats came, did I almost get jolted back to the unfortunate and ugly reality that some would accuse and point a finger, and realize then we had to issue statements and begin to talk about it in a different way. But I want to tell you, I want to message to my community as well. You're right, in small and isolated towns, There will be people who will do ugly and awful things. But there will be many more who will reach out and embrace Arab Americans, and I think that that's the important message of today. We can mourn with the rest of America because we are a part of America, and the fact is that we will work together as one country to defeat this scourge.
Dr. Zogby, it's good to talk to you again. It's been a while.
Thank you.
Wish you well, sir. Thank you.
Let's talk on better times.
In my business, it rarely seems to work that way, though, does it?
Okay, thanks.
We'll try. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. James Zogby from Washington tonight. In London today, this was quite extraordinary. An emotional, unprecedented ceremony taking place at Buckingham Palace. A military band played the Star-Spangled Banner at a special changing of the guard. Of course, this was in honor of the victims of the terrorist attacks. Buckingham Palace today. In New York today, a New Yorker, former President Bill Clinton, lent his support to the relatives and friends of the missing, and this too in its own way was a rather extraordinary scene outside the Armory.
I have two children in the military. He's their dad. He was in on the first through 12th floor, first thing the other morning. His boys out in California, and we need to know where he is.
Is this touched you personally?
They're still fighting people. Don't lose hope.
Thank you very much.
This lady came up to me and she said, "This is my husband. He's missing. He was in the Marine Corps, and two of our sons, are in the military. You commanded them, and I want my husband back."
Give us a lead. Let us know where him and his co-workers may be.
If you were president, what you would do now?
The important thing is that I'm not president. I'm a citizen, and I'm going to support the president. That's what I want every American to do. They know what they have to do. They have to find the facts, and they have to take appropriate action. I can tell you this, having been there, it may or may not be simple, easy, and quick.
Former President Clinton in New York late this afternoon. Our senior analyst, Jeff Greenfield, is here, and you got a couple things you want to talk about. Let me ask you something just quickly.
Please.
Because when I saw the former president in that scene today, I wondered if that wasn't going to spark some resentment by the people, by some people who don't like him very much, that he was trying to steal the stage, steal the spotlight, and he's not the president anymore.
It's possible. I mean, the political sensitivities in a story this overwhelming, the only one that I know that we've seen are was the determination of the White House to shoot, to knock down any notion that he didn't get back to Washington. Yeah. When Bill Southwire at the time sort of it, they gave him extraordinary information. So I assume that may play.
All right, I want to get you quickly to where you want to go here. The messages coming out of the White House are